to translating online help projects. As you know, memoQ also has an online help, and pretty much, I guess, we'll be hearing how this online help gets translated. I've seen some of it. We have our colleague if you want to know more about it, but we'll see more about this subject from Marie. So, Marie, the floor is yours. And once again, at the end of the session, we'll have 5 minutes for questions and answers. So, there you go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me? Yeah. So, yeah, first of all, thank you all for coming here. I'm impressed. I'm a little bit nervous too, but yeah, we'll manage. So, as he mentioned already, this is my biggest love and hate relationship, translation of online helps. I'm pretty sure a lot of you have come across online helps from time to time already, so just imagine you're a user of a machine, standing in front of the machine, coming across some error message, and then you want to pull up the online help, checking what this message means, checking what kinds of troubleshooting steps you're supposed to take. Sounds pretty easy at first sight. Nevertheless, we come across a couple of, let's call it challenges. So first of all, of course we know when we have an online help, one of the most crucial things is that the error message, or I will refer to them as titles, in the online help match the ones that you see on the screen, otherwise it's pretty helpless. Therefore, I guess every one of you, if you have projects like that, you usually receive some kind of display text list from your customers that you're supposed to use when translating these titles. We usually work with a couple of different file formats. First of all, we have XML that's coming from some kind of CMS, but also we have lots of HTML files usually. So when I say lots, I mean it's usually between 1 and 2,000 of these files. So yeah, you can see that there is no manual processing here. So we will try to find a workflow that is as efficient as we can make it happen. Yeah, basically, we have 4 major challenges. The first one being the different source file formats, because if we have different files, we have to process them in a different way. Then we have the troubleshooting measures. Step A, do this. Step B, do that, and so on. These troubleshooting measures have to be translated using the translation memories and the term bases and all the resources we have for the customer. Then we have the page titles, or the error messages, that have to be copied from this display text table we received. And here's a spoiler, of course, usually these page titles have been translated 200 years ago and don't match the translation memory at all. And then of course we have that huge volume that has to be translated within 2 weeks or 2 hours or whatever. So yeah, let's find something efficient, please. You still no? Yeah? No?
You'll be so like now.
Have to scream at us now.
Yeah. Okay. So let's just imagine we imported the files. No. No. What's happening?
Turn up the microphone.
Let's go into memoQ. I have imported the files just as they were using the native filters. So we have a couple of HTML files. We have the XML file I was talking about. Let's have a look into the HTML file. Yes. Okay, I hope you able to see a bit. Otherwise, and everything is in the slides that you will receive afterwards. So, yeah. Well, right away, I guess we can, or at least the ones in the front row, they notice that something is odd about these texts. We have a couple of corrupted characters here, and it does not only look ugly, but also, yeah, it destroys our matches. So if there was a 100% match before, this wouldn't be a 100% match anymore, and we don't want the translators to guess. Of course, you could always make a guess what it means, but yeah, that's not the point of it. So that's that. And also in the preview, we can see that, yeah, we have the titles I was referring to. There is one title per file, because each of these files resembles, or yeah, each of these files is one page in the online help. So that is pretty easy here. There's one title per page. They're usually denoted by unambiguous tags. That's nice. However, we need to somehow manage these corrupted characters. The thing is that the files we receive from the customer are not standardized, they are protected, or whatever. They're not standardized at all. So sometimes we receive Unicode encoded files, that's nice. Usually we don't. So sometimes it's ANSI, sometimes it's nothing we can even detect. So what we are doing, the first thing we're doing is we somehow try to harmonize them as much as we're able to. So we do encode or convert all of them into Unicode. Once being at that, we also find and replace unwanted characters. That's something that can be done within memoQ. So the search and replace can be done within memoQ. The kind of converting we're doing cannot be done within memoQ. However, that's details. So let's pretend we have taken care of the encoding thing. And let's have a look at the XML file. That, fortunately, looks a lot neater because it's XML coming from our CMS. It's very standardized. However, if we have a look at the preview, there are multiple titles within. All these bold ones are titles or error messages. So we have multiple pages in our one XML file. In this case, we have 4 of them. Just believe me, it's 4. And yeah, if we detect them in the editor, we can see, I think you have to believe me, that all of them are denoted by title tags. So these tags, where's my mouse? Well, these tags contain the word title. So if we run a quick search for the title tags only, we should receive all of them. And if you remember what I've said, I said we had 4 pages in the file, however we get 5 hits here. So one of them is not an actual error message. I know that it's this one. It also has the title tag, however it's just a subtitle that actually belongs to the troubleshooting text. Just keep this in mind for later, we will need that. And keep in mind that it's segment Meldung.
Of course, translation of course.
So let's just pretend we have the correct encoding now. So these files are supposed to look nice, the HTML files. Could we now send this to our translator? Well, maybe yes, we could. However, as I've said before, we have not only 5 or 6 files as we have here, we have 1 or 2,000 of these files. And I don't know, I guess most of you are working with a memoQ server. The server can suffer a lot under the performance, or the server performance can suffer a lot under the huge amount of files. So synchronizing is really annoying. And although all of these files are pretty small and there is not much content, the entire pack slows down the server, and it's really annoying for the translators, especially if they don't have good internet connection or so. So we decided to find some other way, or we needed to find some other way. And well, you can always create a view. Unfortunately, that view is local and it doesn't help the translator a lot if we create a view. However, let's see what we can do. So what you can always do is you can export that view. You can export that view into a bilingual file, ideally memoQ xlif. Export it somewhere. And then I won't demonstrate it here, because that's now for the demonstration purposes, this is an offline project, but you can then import your view xlif into another memoQ project and send that one file for translation. And that makes the entire process a lot better performance-wise. Of course, after translation, you have to re-import it and then update your view, but that's really easy. So maybe most of you know it already, but it took me a while to what have I done? Find out. What does it say? Can anyone translate?
So the shape of the screen, so it's project.
Good. All right. Now, could we now send this for translation? No, of course not. Because remember when I said, let's go back to the presentation. Yeah, remember when I said that the troubleshooting texts, these ones here, they have to be translated using the translation memory, while the titles shouldn't be, or actually they must not be translated. Yeah, if you send this to your translator now, the way it is, you would have to ask them to please, if you see these kind of texts, please translate them using the translation memory. If you see these titles, and please find out what the titles are, because I can't tell you right now. Use the display text list and then run a QA, but the QA please only for the, well, you get the point, I guess. And probably you've had these kinds of conversations with your translators already. So that's not what we want to do. And also, since the title thing is a simple copy and paste job, so go into this Excel file that you've seen, copy the source, find the target, copy the target into your memoQ. That's something you don't want to bother anyone with because it sounds like something you can automate really well. So what we want to do, we would like to have two different processes. So we want to have the real translation process, and maybe in the meantime have these titles processed in some automated way. Therefore, we need to somehow separate the single files into two different parts. So we have to, well, first of all, have the title part of the files, and then have the other part of the files, so we can have two non-overlapping parts that we can treat differently. And how do we do that? So, yeah, in memoQ you don't cut files. Yeah, you do the cutting by using filters. So anything that you don't need in that one part, you can just exclude and import the rest of it. It sounds easy, but no. Exactly. It is kind of easy for the HTML files when it comes to troubleshooting text, because I said that we have these, we have the titles, the arrows, denoted by unambiguous tags. So all that we do is we set up an HTML filter and exclude these tags. So in our case, that would be a title tag and also some other tag. That's the details we don't need to know here. I'm going to show you. Of course, you would probably want to set up two different project templates for it. Otherwise, you'd be setting up this forever. So we want to do the troubleshooting first. That's my troubleshooting template.
Things are enough when you have a troubleshooting template.
Yes, and they are. Oops. So, I'm going to show you how this filter looks like. Import my HTML files. So now that's probably not so easy to see for you, but you can guess it. I have this list of excluded tags here. So yeah, you've seen that my import filter came up automatically. That's because I provided my project template with the default import filters for HTML files and so on. So that's why you definitely need a template for it. And if we have a look here, I've included the excluded tags into the filter. Seems I have the same problem now. And we'll have another look. We can still see in the preview the message, error message, title, whatever is here, but it's not in the editor anymore. All the rest is there. So that is nice. Now we have taken care of the HTML files. We would also like to import the XML file. And now, remember what I've said before, if we just wanted to exclude our headers, titles, we would find a filter that excludes them. And we have seen in our first preview that these titles are denoted by title tags. However, we had more entries being tagged by this title tag than we have errors. So we have to find a way to tell them apart, to import the ones and exclude the others. And if you are familiar with XML, you have probably heard of XPath. XPath is a way to, or a meta language kind of, to describe the position or the location of content in an XML file. So when we had a closer look at the XML file, we found out that the titles that we are talking about are always the first title elements in every chapter that's called whatever. So if we found a way to tell memoQ via XPath, exclude only these ones, then it would be set. But memoQ does not speak XPath. That is why we have to find another way. Fortunately, there's some other cut tool, some random cut tool that does speak XPath. So that's the detour we're taking. We're importing our file into this other cut tool, export an XLIF file from there, and have the XLIF file from the other cut tool translated in memoQ. And that is how it looks like. Let's call it, it's a demo XLIF. It's a cascading filter. Because I've used some regex tagger also on it, I forgot to mention, but probably you've seen in the preview, that in our XML file there were a couple of very similar segments differing in only a number or just a code. So that is why I'm now using the regex tagger as well. And if we import this demo XLIF into memoQ, we can see but there's no preview available. Of course, that's a bit annoying. However, it does the trick we need. We have the menu segment that was previously denoted by or marked by title tags. So this is imported for translation. That is what we wanted, and we don't see any error messages here. So that's perfect. Could we now assign this to our translator? Yes, we could. Just run your statistics, send it to the translator, and you're all set. They can start already. So, now we are left with our titles. And I've said we want to set up a second project handling our titles only. Handling the titles only. And we want to automate it as much as possible. So, sounds like a no-brainer. You would only import your titles, run a pre-translation of memoQ, and you're all set. Because of course you previously you set up a live docs containing your or live docs translation memory. What you prefer? I prefer live docs for these purposes. However, you've created a corpus containing your display text. You can run a pre-translation and yeah, it's done. Of course, it's not that easy because, and here's my screenshot, that is how our display text table looks like. That's our file to be translated. This is the display text that's written in the file in the display text table. So you see they don't match. So this won't be a 100% match. You could make a guess. It might be the correct one, but you have to put some manual extra work in it. And we're not talking about a couple of simple occurrences. We're talking about 1/3 of all the files. That's one thing. And also we have these ambiguous source texts. Or yeah, we have the same source, identical source text with different translations. So, how do we handle that? We are having another look into our display text table because what we need, obviously, would be some kind of unambiguous source text we could translate. So, how do we do it? Yeah, exactly. Each of the, if we have a look into our table, we see source text, we see target text, and we also see that there is an ID. The ID is unambiguous, so we need to somehow work with that one. So I thought, what could we do? We could somehow try to fake a translation that translates our IDs into the typos. So if we translate the IDs, there should be a 100% match anyway. Yeah, so that's what we're trying to do here. First thing I do is I set up my titles project with my titles template. And I create a live docs, another live docs from the display text table. Now, if you remember, I'll pause it, sorry, if you remember how it looked like, not column B, but column A, the ID column being the source text. I don't even need the column B. I'm importing it as comments anyway, because who knows, I might need it later on. So I'm using a multilingual delimited text filter for it. That is how it looks like. ID, target text, and I have my source text imported as a comment, just in case we need it. I'm sending this to my live docs. That was created when creating the project by the template. And I remove it from a project because it's just annoying me there. So, yeah. Okay, that was easy. However, we need to somehow, now we have these IDs, we need to find them in our files somewhere. And yeah, if we have another look into our folder, it becomes pretty obvious where they come from. They come from, at least when it comes to the HTML files, they come from the file names. So the file names are the IDs. If we go into the files themselves, we don't want to look for it here. I can tell you that the IDs are nowhere to be found within the file, just as the file names. But what we did then was we created a script. The script took all the titles, I mean the file names in this case, took the file names and replaced the original text to be translated, because we don't need it anymore, by the file names. That's one thing. And also just in case we might need it afterwards. We also added the original source text as a comment, because you can see comments in the memoQ preview. So yeah, of course we needed it afterwards because this doesn't go without any further problems, but in theory it does. Good. So now we have that set up. We can just simply import it now using a filter that excludes everything else and imports the title tags only, title and header in my case. It's usually more convenient to use an XML filter instead of HTML because, as I've said, these files are super non-standardized. Sometimes there are lots of tags that occur, sometimes they aren't, and it's a lot easier to set this up in an XML filter instead of HTML. Fabulous. So, yeah, that is how it looks like. So you see lots of content untranslated. Now, looking into our files, wonderful, that's exactly what I wanted to have. Now I have, you can see that up there in the upper right corner, I have 100% matches, and I have them everywhere. So usually my template is also set up with a pre-translation on import, so there's nothing you have to do manually anymore now, just for the sake of showing you I excluded that. But I can do that now, just with one hit. So, HTML is taken care of. We just need to take care of the XML file now. And yeah, unfortunately, for the XML files, it was not that easy. We looked a lot. We were looking for these IDs for quite a long time, but finally we found them. Let's see. I won't show you in the XML itself, but yeah, here it is. So in the XML files, the ID is hidden as a value to an attribute somewhere. But you can see it's somewhere close to what we originally wanted to translate. So we need to translate this value now. Well, there is no way to do so, and also we don't want to change the value because this has to be left unchanged. Okay, mission failed. I almost gave up on this, but then we came up with another idea. Why don't we find some filter that imports this and replaces something that is close to it. And there is a filter for this, and it's the multilingual XML filter. And I will show you how that looks. I hope you can see where this gets. Yeah. So the multilingual XML filter in memoQ, this one does speak XPath. There is a way to tell memoQ, please look for this kind of location within the XML file. Use this as your source text, then find the text that's somewhere close to this ID. Use this as the target text and replace that one. And I didn't actually believe in the possibility it could work, but of course it did. And here we go. Yeah, usually you see that I import anything that I have from the file just to make sure it's written somewhere. Usually I import the original source text with it, I export it into some bilingual file, put it away in case I might need it later on, and then clear translations. Clear translations, and then you have these 100% matches on the right. So you can run the pre-translation with all unambiguous TM matches. And you're all good. So that was one quicker than we expected. We're done. The translator, in the meantime, has finished as well. Has finished. Yep. So now we're done, right? We can deliver now to the customer. No, we can't, because now what we have here is now, of course, for each file that we have two different files. We have the one with a translated title but untranslated content. We have one with an untranslated title and translated content. We would like to have a fully translated one. Do we have to do some more scripting? Yes, maybe we could, but there is a very nice and probably very underrated feature in memoQ, being the re-import and X-translation or cross-translation. So now that we have these half-translated files, all that we have to do now is what I'll use. You can use any of your two projects, but usually the one with the smaller content, it's probably safer. So I'm just going here. This is version 1.0. Now I'm saying to please re-import my file from the location where it's translated. Which one did I choose? No, I took my favorite one. Yeah, you can see now it chooses the same configuration that we have used the first time. Re-import, and we have version 2, we have 100% progress, because I've set this up with on re-import, please do a cross-translation. And we open it now and have a look at this very nice preview. We can see the title has been translated, and also, yeah, here the content is translated as well. So now let's see how this looks in the target format. So it's here. Isn't this beautiful? I was so happy when I found this. Good, yeah. Just to sum it up, what have we learned? I hope you won't encounter too many of these kind of things, but I've heard that some of you already have. In general, what have we learned for our future use in memoQ? We've learned that we need to somehow generate the lowest common denominator on the file formatting or the file output in general. So in our case that was find and replace. You can even do that within memoQ, encoding and so on. We can exploit the power of views, so we can do all kinds of crazy views that we can think of. In my case that was just a glue, but you can, maybe you have different purposes for it that you can actually send for translation. Of course, it always goes with a con on the other side. The preview is probably lost and so on, but yeah, sometimes it's worth it. we can outsource tasks that should not be or don't need human processing. So it's not only that we want to pay less to our translators, but the translators are not really keen on doing these kinds of jobs either. So that's something that you can perfectly automate. You should use all automated tasks and project templates that you can. And if you see that initial file filters don't prove useful for your purposes, you can always misuse others. Yeah, just be a bit creative on this. Also, remember that there is the re-import and then there is the X-translation memoQ. Unfortunately, this has become, I don't know why, this has become very slow with the recent memoQ version, I think with the 8.3. So this is a bit nasty right now, but I'm positive it will be changed at some point. Yeah, thank you.